Good evening. Hello, everyone. Do you mind if I just ask you to join your seat? Because I think we are about to start, and we also need to have as less movement in the room as possible due to the Zoom transmission. Okay, I'll give you a few seconds to settle down, and I will quickly hand over to the head of the Moroccan HK, Katharina Felgenhauer. Katharina, thank you very much. Up to you, and thank you for hosting us tonight.
Thank you very much. Good evening from my side. As you could hear, my name is Katharina Felgenhauer. I am the CEO of the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry here in Morocco, based in Casablanca. And I really appreciate that you applauded already before I said anything, so I feel elated. Maybe you're just getting impatient, which I understand, because we have a very, very interesting and I hope very relevant program for you tonight. And I know you haven't come here to listen to me. You've come here for more information on H2Global. And we're quite excited to have the H2Global Roadshow here with us because as the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Morocco, we work with the German companies and the Moroccan companies and the Moroccan government and institutions, as well as the German institutions and partners. So we see the potential, just like you see the potential. Right? And we're waiting for things, little elements that can link parts of the chain, right? So that is what we do as the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Morocco, and we're quite excited to have more input today from H2Global. Just for a bit more piece of information as background, the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry here in Morocco, we have more than 950 member companies, and most of them are actually Moroccan companies that are working with German companies, with German business partners, with German clients, as well as suppliers. So it is our pleasure, yes, to host you here tonight, but of course we couldn't do this ourselves. We're just the convener. As I said, you can tell excited about the content ourselves, but we're conveners. And we're very happy, you will hear that in a minute, to have very important institutions represented here today.
Katharina? Katharina, you want to come over here?
Thank you very much. Shout out to the Radisson Hotel, Casablanca, le Gauthier. Very good hotel to help us out here. Where was I? So yes, we're excited about content, we're conveners, and we have very important institutions and guests and companies present here today in the audience, but you will also be addressed by some of our dear partners. And you already see a bit of information in the background, but I do promise that the content that you will hear and see today is highly relevant, and I invite you to make use of this opportunity to ask your questions, continue building your project ideas, and don't leave too early, benefit from the networking opportunity that we have organized right after the session. I also want to point out that we have some participants who are following the session online. So it's a bigger group than us here in this room. And I'm also excited to tell you that we have guests from Germany, but also from other countries where we work in the H2Up program. The H2Up program is actually the one that is supporting today's event, among many other things. And we are welcoming guests from various countries who will stay here for the next 2 days for a working session on H2Up in those various countries, including Morocco. Here in Morocco, H2Up, funded by the German Ministry for Economic Affairs, is implemented by GIZ, and we as German Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Morocco are partners in this program. So you see there's a whole, say, network of a support system coming together to promote hydrogen, green hydrogen solutions in Morocco, but also for export and hopefully for stronger German-Moroccan relations. I'll hand over back to Matthias to tell you a bit about who's in the room and what is up for the program. But I really want to wish you a very pleasant, very insightful evening, and as I said, make use of this opportunity to ask your questions and continue building your project ideas, because I know that many of you are already active in various projects to different levels of maturity. So hopefully we'll get even further tonight, and hopefully we get further together. Do enjoy.
Thank you very much, Katharina, for your kind words. They are much appreciated. Well, as Katharina mentioned, my name is Matthias Willing. I work at the German Technical Corporation, where I'm in charge of some hydrogen programs, 2 of them. I will steer you through this evening, and this evening is actually about making sure that some hydrogen projects are going to be icebreaker and are going to be able to bridge the current price gap that we do have between green products and gray products. And perhaps I'm partial to that, but as I'm working in Morocco, I of course very much hope that the Moroccan project is going to be able to make the race when it comes to the Africa call from H2Global and from HINCO. I would also like to start, before handing over to our guest speakers, by thanking also Katharina and her team. First of all, of course, Claudia and Riemel, with whom we've been working very closely in order to organize this event tonight, but not only. So a big thank you to the 3 of you and to all your colleagues for the cooperation. That is really indeed much appreciated, and your support is really highly valuable to us. So thanks for that. Our role here, both from HK and from GIZ, it is to facilitate the relationship between HINCO and potential investors or producers that aim to kickstart projects, whether in Morocco or in other African countries, so that they could take part to the Africa call, or also, by the way, to the global call. I'm very curious, just as you are, to hear more from the colleague from HINCO about how the process will unfold when it comes to the tender. But first of all, I would like to call to the stage the first of our guest speakers, of course, His Excellency, the German Ambassador, Robert Dolger. Thank you very much for being here and taking the time. So before having the opportunity to have a quick break, a few introduction words concerning the Ambassador. Ambassador Dolger is, if I dare say, a very experienced hand of the German Foreign Service, with posting in Africa, in Turkey, and now in a difficult context, at the beginning at least, in Morocco. So thank you very much for your tireless support to improve the relationship between Germany and Morocco. And I couldn't help but noticing, while I read your biography, that you also had worked at the German Industry Confederation, just as I did, by the way, so I might not end up as a German ambassador in Morocco, but still that kind of makes a connection to our topic of tonight with green industry. So, Mr. Ambassador, Your Excellency, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Dear Mr. Rilling, dear Katharina Felgenhauer, dear Mohamed Yahya Sniba, dear representatives of our host government, the government of the Kingdom of Morocco, dear interested parties in the second H2Global tender, dear colleagues and friends, thank you very much for inviting me. I feel very honored to be here at a new, I would say, opening of the next phase of the development of green hydrogen. I'm here since 3 years as an ambassador, and I can tell you that things have changed a lot since then. And we are going very clearly from a phase where we have supported this development of the green hydrogen sector more through the public funding. Now we are going more and more into the private sector, into the industrial size projects. So I'm very much happy to be here and to share this moment with you. So as ambassador, German ambassador to Morocco, of course, I'm very impressed by the strong showing, the strong turnout today from Morocco, which reflects the Kingdom of Morocco's ambition and commitment to making green hydrogen a cornerstone of its energy future and also of its economic model. So I'm very pleased here also to be joined by Dr. Christian Storost, the head of the International Green Hydrogen Ramp-Up Division at the German Federal Ministry of Economic Affairs and Energy, as it is called, I think, from today, with our new government. So welcome to you to be here and to share your insights with us. Ladies and gentlemen, the aim of this roadshow is to provide you with detailed information on the H2Global mechanism, and in particular on the recently published second H2Global auction round, which is open for applications. I'm delighted to see such strong interest also from those who are not with us, but you can see us today in this initiative, and it's rightly so. The mechanism stands out as truly pioneering and innovative model for advancing the global hydrogen economy by providing a reliable long-term offtake. The Federal Republic of Germany is one of Africa's long-standing partners, especially in the field of energy sovereignty and energy transition. Together, we aim to advance on this path towards a more sustainable future. We believe that green hydrogen can become a vector for the valorization of the continent's vast potential for renewable energy generation and driver for economic development. Ladies and gentlemen, the H2Global tender offers a promising opportunity for Africa's emerging green hydrogen sector. And this is the tender we're looking at today. It provides a valuable chance for the bankable production of green molecules and can lay the groundwork for future industry, one that will play a key role in the green transition in Africa, as well as in Europe and in Germany. And I'm pleased that some people from South Africa are here, because I think this is also one of the countries which will be at the forefront of this change. If you allow me to talk a bit pro domo, saying Morocco, I'm personally very pleased to see that Morocco has established itself as one of the frontrunners on the continent with regards to renewable energy and green hydrogen in the form of the OFRE Maroc. And it has given itself the institution, the processes, and the framework for entering this sector. And though it's my hope that H2Global will serve to strengthen the development of green hydrogen production in Morocco and across the continent, though I really welcome you for the choice of this location being here in Casablanca. In closing, I would like to warmly welcome HINTCO, the German Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Morocco, the GIZ, the Green Hydrogen Cluster of Morocco, and all the partners who have made this event possible. This evening is not just a technical information session, but also to provide a political and economic platform to build new partnerships in support of innovation, sustainability, and shared prosperity. Dear participants, following Katharina Felgenhauer's, so to say, recommendation, I also encourage you to take full advantage of today's opportunity for networking and sharing of experience and connecting. And I wish you an insightful evening, success with your endeavors, and inspiring perspectives for cooperation. And thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Ambassador, Your Excellency. I would now like you to welcome our next guest on stage, Mr. Mohamed Yahya Sniber. I don't know if I really need to bother to present you, as everyone knows you in the room, but still, I will try. So, Mr. Sniber, you are currently, of course, a man of many hats, president of the GreenH2 cluster, chairman of the board of the directors of Maghreb Steel, and I couldn't help noticing how the last line of your very long CV matches the first, and I think your first posting was in the Société Nationale d'Électrolyse, the Petrochimie. So life is a full circle, I would say. So just aside, Mr. Sniber has been working tirelessly to develop the Moroccan industry, and your work as a GreenH2 cluster is a testimonial to this. Mr. Sniber, Mr. President, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you to Katarina to host us, and Mr. Ambassadors, Dr. Torost, ladies and gentlemen. It is with a great pleasure that we welcome you today to the H2Global roadshow here in Casablanca. We are honored together to discuss a topic that is not only timely, but also crucial for the future of our industry and our country. This meeting, organized in strategic regions around the world, including Morocco, highlights our country's privileged position on the international stage of green hydrogen. This is due to the recognized strengths of our nation, as well as the political commitment and determination of our entire ecosystem. Together, we are working to build the necessary infrastructures and overcome all challenges to make Morocco a true producer of green hydrogen. Today, we come together in a spirit of collaboration. This word resonates particularly in the context of our GreenH2 cluster, which strives to unite the effort of various stakeholders, producers, industrials, researchers, and institutions to advance our common agenda. Together, we have the opportunity to transform Morocco's exceptional potential in green hydrogen into tangible reality. The GreenH2 cluster works toward the strongest possible industrial integration within the framework of the major green hydrogen project that will be developed in Morocco. Studies are underway, models are being developed, and several actors are actively working to enable the integration. We are fortunate to be building a solid and dynamic ecosystem capable of responding to the challenges and opportunities that lie ahead. The H2Global mechanism, which will be at the heart of our discussions today, opens new avenues for our sectors. With budget that could reach nearly 3 billion euros, this initiative is not just financial support. It is a call for innovation and commitment. We must seize this opportunity to strengthen our position in international market and accelerate the development of our sectors. I encourage you to take advantage of this opportunity, to exchange ideas, ask questions, and explore the many possibilities available to us. In conclusion, I would like to express my heartfelt gratitude to each of you for your presence and commitment. A special thank to Your Excellency, to INTCO, for choosing Morocco as the host for this important African in-person event, and to AHK and GIZ for their invaluable support. I hope that this meeting will serve as a significant stepping for our ecosystem. Thank you very much. C'est plus facile, pardon.
Thank you very much, Mr. President, for your kind words. And last but not least, I would now like to ask you to welcome the man without whom we probably would not be here tonight. Obviously, Dr. Christian Storost, the head of the Division for International Hydrogen Ramp-Up at the German Federal Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, a lawyer by training, experienced in various hydrogen support schemes from H2Up, EIB funding, export guideline probably, and also, of course, H2Global. Mr. Storost, thank you very much. The floor is yours.
Merci, Monsieur Rilling. Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. Also to those who are here only by virtual means, but are with us today in our hearts. Mr. Ambassador, Mr. Zneber, dear colleagues from partnering institutions like GSZ, HINCO, I see Mr. Erdmann, Mr. Enke, Pauline Rabe, who will present to you the HINCO position, the outline of the tender, and also a very warm welcome to all representatives of project developers and industry. I'm here because I want to learn from you, from your projects. I had the opportunity this afternoon already to exchange with some of you, but I'll be here all night to discuss with all of those who I haven't met or who have any further messages to convey to the new government. Because indeed, today is a very special day for the German politics. We have a new government, finally. It has been a day full of tension. Ambassador Dölger has made reference to the new name of our ministry, which is now Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, and I convey the best wishes to all of you from the new Minister in charge of Energy, Katharina Reiche. I'm sure she will keep on track for hydrogen imports, because we have seen the coalition agreement that has been signed yesterday, and it's so fresh that I ask your understanding and pardon that I have to read it, because it's still it's the basis of our work, but the best is that it mentions H2Global explicitly. It makes reference to Germany keeping to be an energy importing country, keeping to be on track also for hydrogen imports, because we know that hydrogen will be produced in Germany, but not sufficiently for the demand we expect. And so despite the new government being more pragmatic maybe on some ways of regulation on hydrogen, the main message is that Germany will still stick to hydrogen imports, will still stick to the energy partnership with Morocco that has been concluded in 2012 and has done a lot of work, done a lot of preparatory work also for the hydrogen sector since. And so we have explicit references to partnering with Africa. We don't have specific mentioning of Morocco, but I'm sure that Katharina Reiche and our ministry will further develop this partnership together with you, Mr. Dölger, as the ambassador here in place. And this is why we have chosen today also to be here in Casablanca to discuss with you the outline of the upcoming tender. As you know, it's a tender that has been split in different regions. We wanted to avoid that all of the money goes to only one project. We rely on diversification. We rely in Africa as part of this diversification. And we see the potential you have here in the northern parts of Africa, in Morocco in particular. So we're here also to discuss with you the opportunities, possible questions you may have regarding the outline, and because we want to give you the time to prepare for the upcoming tender. And There may be some questions like what's next afterwards. I'm sure there will be room for a discussion in the second part of tonight's event. So take advantage of this. I know it's very interactive. I've been following previous sessions in other parts of the world, and I can promise you it's going to be very interactive, very insightful. And special thanks to Hinco for preparing this event. Thanks also to Katharina Felgenhauer for making this event possible, together with Radisson de Gauthier here. Thanks to GIZ, and last but not least, to Green H2 cluster here in Morocco, Mr. Zneba. We trust on you and on your partnership and on your insightful views of how we can still improve this partnership. Thank you very much. Good luck for the upcoming tender, and happy to learn more from you now.
Thank you very much, Dr. Sorost. Thank you also again to our three first speakers. And now I would like to introduce very briefly our two input providers, so to say, for tonight. Markus Enke is currently the Chief Operating Officer at Hinco. He's a chemical engineer by training and also holds an MBA from the University of Chicago, and has been in leading position in the energy business sector, be it in Germany, in Turkey, and in the Czech Republic for 25 years now. Thank you very much, Mr. Enke, for being there. And he will be assisted by Martin Erdmann. Martin Erdmann is currently a lead project manager, also at Hinco, obviously, and is currently preparing and implementing the different roadshow that Hinco have planned to explain the project call of the second phase of H2Global. So thank you very much to both of you. I will quickly make the handover, but I think perhaps just a quick reminder, we will first have the presentation, then the Q&A, be it from the room or from the hybrid format of the event. So Markus and Martin, up to you. I don't know if you want to come over here or to stick to the chairs, but the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah, good evening. Okay, good evening. So thank you for the very kind words. We are really happy that there are so many participants in the room and also online. So thank you very much for the preparation. As Matthias already said, my name is Martin Erdmann. I'm working for Hinco, for H2Global for more than 3 years now, together with my colleague Markus, who will walk you through the characteristics of the contract and also speak about the delivery of the product. So we already had the introduction from Mr. Stochers, so I will skip this one and just speak about H2Global a bit. So H2Global was developed 4 or 5 years ago in a situation when we didn't have any market. So the supply prices were very high and the willingness to pay on the offtake side was very low. So H2Global was developed to bridge this gap between supply and demand in order to create a market. Therefore, we created an auction mechanism, kind of a subsidy that we call a double auction mechanism. So why is it a double auction mechanism? On the left side, on the supply side, we will have long-term offtake agreements with fixed prices, fixed terms and conditions for the producer that enable the producer to reach FID with their projects. And on the offtake side, we will have short-term sales agreements which create important market signals for the market in order to create transparency, bring transparency to the market. And of course, we will have a gap in between. And this gap will be filled by government funding in the second funding window. And now I'm a bit embarrassed to say that we still have the old name of the ministry. So whenever you see BMWE, of course we mean the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. So the funding for the second funding window is provided by the ministry, by the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, as well as the Dutch Ministry for Climate Protection and Green Growth. I won't go into too many details because today we want to focus on the second funding window. But we already proved that H2Global works. So last year we closed the first contract for the delivery of RFNBO ammonia to Europe in the first funding window. If you want to learn more about the first funding window or about the project from H2Global, I would kindly invite you to check our website. There's so many information presented about the funding window, about the results, and also about the project. Just some key figures about the project. There will be 100 megawatts of electrolyzer capacity installed in Egypt for the production of renewable ammonia, and about 270 megawatt of renewable capacity. And we expect the first deliveries to take place in Rotterdam in 2027. We always say that HINCO is a bankable off-taker, and that HINCO is 100% backed by the governments. So you might be wondering if this is still the case with the new government, and as Mr. Stochers already said, H2Global was mentioned in the coalition agreement between the two parties that form the new government today. We will publish this agreement with the final documents that will be published, as well as a grant as well as the legal opinion from a very well-known German law firm speaking about the agreement itself. As I said, we are 100% government-backed. This is what makes us a very bankable contract partner. Saying 100% government-backed means, or why we are very bankable contract partner is because you might be wondering, we buy for a very high price and sell on a low price. So you might be wondering, how does this business case even work? So the liabilities that we have on the purchase side, they are limited to the funds that are provided by the governments. So therefore, we are always able to fulfill our liabilities on the purchase side. That's why we are a very bankable off-taker. As I already mentioned, we offer you, as a producer, a long-term off-take agreement with fixed prices, fixed terms and conditions that you can use to reach your FID. And we also provide some kind of flexibility in the beginning of the project. That's something Markus will touch upon later. In case you want to scale up your project, even beyond the capacities that we can buy from your project, we can function as an anchor off-taker. And I think a very important point to mention is that we can, the advantage that you get out from H2Global, for example, is that we bring you in contact with so many off-takers in Europe. So HINCO does not work as a normal midstreamer. HINCO does not have a balance sheet. We prepare the trading that it's back to back. So you hand the product as a producer to the off-taker on the point of delivery. So that's why you are introduced to so many off-takers in Europe. And I think another important point is we all know energy is all about regulation. And when you've been through the process, you will be very familiar with the European regulation, and you will know exactly what the European market needs for the product to be accounted as RFNBO. Before I speak about more details about the second funding window, just a quick disclaimer. So currently we are in the public release phase, which is a very early stage of the process. We published all our documents in the middle of February, and we are asking for feedback. So those documents are not yet legally binding. The documents that will be legally binding are those documents that will be published at the end of the public release phase, which is currently foreseen for mid-June, for example. Here you can see a quick overview of our second funding window. And I will go through the slides very quick, but we will touch upon every point later in the presentation. So as Mr. Stochers already mentioned, we have five lots this time, 4 regional product open lots and 1 vector open global lot. And the product open means for us that there are several eligible products. So we have hydrogen, ammonia, and methanol, and it's up to the producer to decide whether to deliver any of those products. In the vector open lot, which is the global lot, we want to receive hydrogen. So the producer is free to choose any vector to deliver the hydrogen, but in the end, the product has to be converted to hydrogen again. Like in the first tender, the products have to comply with the renewable energy requirements set out by the European Commission in the regulation, which are basically, like, the most important ones are the renewability of the electricity that is used to produce the product, the GHG emission reduction of the product, and also the mass balanced delivery of the product. The delivery will take place in Germany for the product open lots, and in the Netherlands and Germany on a 50-50 basis for the vector open lots. So basically, where the money comes from, we will bring the product to this country. The available budget also increased compared to the first auction. We have 484 million available for the product open lot and 576 million available for the vector open lot currently. Of course, the scoring criteria, again, the price is the most important scoring criteria with 90%. And again, we have some eligibility criteria, very basic eligibility criteria. And just to mention this, we reduced the eligibility criteria. So it's compared to the first auction process. I think that's worth to mention. We also have another new criteria, which is the minimum project size of 5 megawatt. And some of you might know that's the same criteria that also the European Hydrogen Bank has. And of course, we are conducting several roadshow events now in order to share as many information as possible early in the process to have a very transparent process. And until now, we received very good feedback. We also want to have an interactive session. So we also want to get to know you here in the room and also online. So we would kindly ask you to scan the QR code to participate in this survey. And you also have some QR codes on your table, so you could also use this one if it's possible. Okay, I see most of you scanned the QR code. So let's see the first question. We would like to know, can you click to the next slide maybe? It's not working right now. Okay, perfect. And can you start it again? Perfect. So we would like to know if you already had the opportunity to look into the tender documents. And it's not a test, so. Okay, I think we can continue. This will be still open, so we have 43 replies now. So most of you didn't study at all. It's not an issue for us. I mean, that's why we are here. So we are explaining some more of the points, and I think maybe it's easier for you to go through the documents after we explain some of the points to you. Could you click again on the next slide? Because with those surveys, it's a bit difficult. Perfect. So here you can see an overview of our current timeline. As I said, we are in the public release phase. which was started with the publication of the documents in February. And we actively asked for feedback. So please go through the documents, provide feedback. That's very valuable for us. And we will include this feedback in the updated documents, if possible and if reasonable. And we will also keep updating our FAQs online in order to give as many information and as specific information as possible. After the public release phase, we will have the application phase, where we ask you to provide the eligibility criteria to show that you're eligible for the process. And afterwards, we will have the negotiation phase. There won't be any reduction of the bidders beyond the eligibility criteria, and we will speak to every bidder that is eligible for the process. We will ask the bidders to hand in proposals to adjust the contracts, and then, of course, assess them in detail. And the result of this phase, of the negotiation phase, will be a final set of documents, the final HPA, that is the basis for every bidder in this lot for the bidding phase. The bidding phase, of course, we will ask you to provide your bid. And for transparency and for your planning, we don't expect to ask for the final bid earlier than March 2026. And after receiving all the hopefully many bids also from Morocco, we will evaluate the bids, of course, and inform the best bidder. Here you can see an overview of the auction lots. As we said, we have this global auction lot where we asked for hydrogen to be delivered, and then the regional lots, the regional product open lots, with a North American lot also including Middle America, then also the South America and Oceania lot, as well as the Asian lot and, of course, the African lot. One question that was raised several times during other roadshow events is if it's possible to participate in both lots or in more than one lot. Matthias, you already mentioned it in the introduction. So if you're a producer, for example, in Morocco, and you're able to deliver hydrogen, we are also happy to receive your bid in the product open lot as well as in the global vector open lot. That's maybe one of the most important slides in this presentation. As I said, energy is all about regulation. It's important to understand that there are some criteria that can't be changed by HINCO. So those are not up for discussion during the negotiation phase, which is, first of all, the certification. So in order to prove that your product is RFNBO conform, you have to issue proofs of sustainability, and therefore your project needs to be certified. So we would strongly encourage you as a producer to get in touch with an accredited certifier under the voluntary schemes. Compared to the first funding window, for example, there were no voluntary schemes and no accredited certifiers. So that's a big advantage for the next funding window, or for the current funding window. Of course, we have the criteria of the GH2 emission reduction. And we will also, the issue is that we want the producer, the off-takers, to be able to use the product as RFNBO. So therefore, we need there needs to be some room left for the transport of the product to the point of final consumption, which is why we are asking for 73% emission reduction at the point of delivery in Germany or or the Netherlands. And then an additional criteria, which is currently not part of the documents that were published in February, which is not an issue because most of you didn't study them anyway. So this will be published in the updated version of the HPA that will be updated soon, is that the overall emission reduction for the products that are produced in the subsidized capacity has to be at least 70% on average over the whole duration of the HPA. So basically, this means even if you plan to produce non-RFNBOs with this capacity and they are not delivered to Hindco, it has to be shown that the overall produced products in this capacity are at least reach the GHG emission reduction of 70%. And we are not allowed to give any advice. We are not advising any of the projects, but there are ways that make it easier to implement this requirement. For example, if you separate the capacities, the subsidized capacities, from other capacities that you use for the production of non-RFNBOs. So again, we would encourage you to get in contact with certifiers early on in the process while you're still in the project design, for example, to be able and to be sure that you can fulfill this requirement. As I said, certification is a very important thing in our process, and in order not to put too much burden on the bidders, we have kind of a phase-in approach for the certification. So when you hand in your bid, we ask you to provide a self-assessment of certification readiness, which basically means that you have to show that you familiarized yourself with the requirements of the certification, that you have to show that you know about the technical requirements, about the data that has to be gathered, about the organizational structure that is needed. So it's a self-declaration kind of thing, but you have to show that you know what we are speaking about when we are speaking about certification. So the next step, and we only ask this from the best bidders, but as I already said before, the certification is very important, so we would also encourage you to do this very early in the project process. We ask the best bidder or the best bidders to hand in a pre-certification. So the pre-certification is issued by an accredited certifier under the voluntary schemes, and it's basically a report saying if your project or your project design complies with the requirements by the European Union for the RFNBO criteria or not. So it's not a pre-certification, but it shows if you're on the right track. Before the production starts, we will ask you to provide a certification, like the real certification. So this has to be done again by an accredited certifier, and this has to be renewed, recertified every 12 months. So this certification is necessary to issue this proofs of sustainability that are necessary for the product to be recognized as RFNBO in Europe. So all in all, certification is a very important thing. Just a few words on the budget. For transparency, we just want to mention that there's an ongoing process currently. We try to increase the funding that is available for the year 2036, which is currently slightly below average, and we want to have an additional year in 2037. So that's an ongoing process because we already spoke about it with the BMWE. I'm not sure if it's still BMWE. Is it BMWE? Okay, sorry, thank you. So we already spoke about it with the ministry. And the issue was that this has to be decided by the parliament, by the new government. So that's why we had some delays here. But since we have finally a new government in Germany as of today, we are very, very positive that this will be decided soon. And then there's another point that is currently not a process. We received a lot of feedback that on the roadshow, so that's why this roadshow is also important for us, that suppliers or producer would appreciate if we could move the funding from early years in the process to a later stage in the process. I see some people nodding already. So your feedback during the roadshow, also feedback to Mr. Stochhorst, is a very valuable and strong mandate for us when we are speaking to the ministry in Germany. Markus.
Yes, thank you, Martin. Actually, I'm planning to use this for this. Does this work? Can you hear me? Probably no. Does it work now? Yes? Wonderful. So thank you, Martin, for giving me the opportunity to now take you into the nitty-gritty details of some of the aspects of these long-term purchase agreements that you're all so interested about to basically conclude as one important element for making your project coming alive. And there are actually a few particularities in the contract design that we need to apply due to the fact that Martin has already been explaining about the nature of Hinco being a very unusual trader. First of all, you need to understand we have a very small team. We're just 10 people in the company right now. And we are aiming to keep it that way. So what we want to make sure is that across the supply chain that we are establishing with this long-term offtake agreement on the one hand, and then the sales side agreements that we are going to conclude, we are basically going to match the supplier with off-takers. We want the suppliers to be in direct touch with the consumers or the user of the product, or the traders that basically buy the product in the short-term sales auctions. So why am I saying that? Because one very important element for making Hinco bankable, making the offtake commitment that we are giving to the best bidder an asset that can be discussed with lenders, with banks, is that we are basically concluding these contracts and committing to offtake up to the annual budget that is made available by the fund providers. In that second window, it's predominantly the German government, and for the international window or for the global window, also the Dutch government as well. These funds are made available in annual installments. So basically what you're seeing here as a concept is there are the annual tranches displayed here, and they are about 60 million euros per annum per lot, and that will be the amount of product offtake that Hinco will be committing to in the offtake agreement. The bad news is actually, because these are annual budgets, they are annual, and we won't be able to on our sole discretion move those, or on the basis of feedback that we're receiving from the projects. That is the funds that are basically pledged to that second funding window. And as Martin pointed out, we are working on some measures to optimize that funding, in particular with regard to the aspired award date in 2026. We all believe that a lead time of 2 years for this type of projects is really short, and it would definitely be beneficial if we were able to shift some of the funds from the beginning to the end. Other than that, I think important aspects for any big project, big industrial investment project, is that there is project uncertainty along the timeline of the construction and along the timeline of bringing the operation into progress. And this is one particular feature that we will be addressing in the contract that we are going to conclude with the best bidder. So we are putting into this contract a certain flexibility phase where the supply commitment is not going to be as firm as it from the second year of supply then must be, because we basically want to make sure that we are having a firm and valid agreement with the supplier in place. However, with some flexibility in the beginning, and the commitment of the funds in terms of firm offtake is one element of the contract. There is going to be a second feature that I'm going to come to in a minute that relates to additional quantities that could also be offered and that are part of the scoring process in the tender procedure. So now what we do have here is that this ramp up of phase-in mechanism is expressed in that slide, but I'm actually not going to explain it in detail because I believe it's quite self-explanatory. In case you have any question with that, just keep it to the Q&A session and I will be happy to answer those. What I believe is important for you to understand with regard to the contract details is that the H2Global mechanism works as a price difference funding scheme. So any fund provided by the governments for supporting green hydrogen projects is utilized to bridge the price difference between the production price and the perceived, initially at least, lower sales price that HINCO is going to achieve. I mentioned we have a 10-people operation right now. We basically need to have a lot of expertise from outside for legal consulting as well as technical consulting. All of these operations come at a price, and we needed to find a mechanism to basically cover that operating costs. So that would be the reason why the winning bidder actually will have to pay an initial service fee that will depend on the contract value. It's a percentage term of the contract value, and then there will also be annual service fees and a fee per batch of product that is not fulfilling the contractually agreed specifications, because this is going to be something that we will need to put additional work in, and we wanted to reflect that cost element then also in the contract structures. What is important to understand as well is that we believe we put your money where your mouth is. So in this contract, we will hold you accountable for the commitment that you're making. However, the contract liabilities will not be unlimited, but they will be kept in some way. Amongst other things, a contract penalty is going to apply if you are not pursuing, or if you're not performing according to your delivery commitments, which we believe is rather important to make this all firm and reasonable for all parties. Next to the product characteristics, we also do have various additional contractual agreements or requirements that we are basically, due to the grant letter, need to cover and that we need to fulfill. And to the extent that a counterparty is not able to basically comply to these requirements, we also have an incentive mechanism. Some people call it penalties, but I rather would speak of incentives, and not to breach some of those obligations in the contract. Last but not least, I think it's very important for bidders to understand at what point in time which financial commitment will be needed. And there actually, along the process, is going to be a need for placing performance bonds of increasing magnitude over time. So after a month after the award to the winning bidder, 2.5% of the contract value will need to be required to be provided as a performance bond, and that performance bond coverage will need to increase over time to up to 10% of the annual contract value 1 year before the start of delivery. Basically, that is the backing that HINCO does need to cover any commitments that HINCO might be making by about that point in time to off-takers, because on the sales side we were planning to sell the products about 1 year ahead of production to customers, and once we are basically in the middle of these two contracts with no coverage, that might be an unpleasant experience, and we want to have an incentive for the producer not to leave us alone in that occasion. Now, having said that, I now have the opportunity to give you a quick idea about how we will be doing the scoring in the procurement tender process. There will be two scoring elements actually. The most important scoring element is going to be the price, the contract price bid by the bidder in the tender process, which will be the simple volume weighted average price of all contract years. And the contract price itself will be composed of various components because, as Martin also already pointed out, the supply chain is going to require delivery of the product to a delivery location in Germany. So there's not only the production of the product, but there will also be the transport of the product from the production site to the location where it's going to be handed over to HINCO. There are going to be probably logistic charges at the terminal and at the harbor where the transfer of title and risk takes place, and import and export duties might be playing a role over time in the overall price calculation as well. So these elements for 3 eligible commodities in the regional lots, ammonia, methanol or hydrogen, will form the contract price, and the comparison of the 3 products, if any basically offers received for all 3 of them, will be conducted then on a energy unit basis. So we will be scoring the bids that we receive on a euro per megawatt hour basis. Important to understand is that there is no price adjustment mechanism foreseen in the long-term offtake agreement. However, any bidder is free to basically, in each of the contract years, offer a different price, so reflecting any cost projections that might occur over the term of the contract. Next to the product price, a second scoring criteria by 10% of the overall score is going to be what we call optional additional quantities offered by bidders in the tender process. The idea behind that is that producers might want to actually build a larger scale plant than just for the minimum offtake commitment that HINCO can provide in the beginning, and that the producer will offer HINCO the opportunity to draw on additional quantities from that production with a certain lead time, basically a date, probably something like a year ahead of the actual production year, at the contract price. HINCO would be happy to basically buy more quantity by utilizing the revenue HINCO can generate from sales transactions on the short-term sales contract side. So that is an anticipated additional cash flow that HINCO wants. It knows that it has been secured, could utilize to utilize this optional quantity flexibility in the contract. Now, we would like to do that. However, at this point in time, we still need to reach final agreement with the providers of the funding that this utilization of the sales revenues is actually possible. So we are in advanced discussions regarding that matter. I can't tell whether we will be concluding these discussions with a positive result before we start the auction process, but for sure you will know before you will be placing your bid what the status on that discussion is, which very obviously is going to provide a certain additional leverage with regard to size of the projects. So last but not least, Martin mentioned already there are going to be a couple of criteria that we are having for permitting bidders to participate in the tender process. First of all, we want to have only participants that have a good financial standing. So an equity ratio of some 20% is perceived as threshold here. But in case that your company is really young or it does not have that, there are alternatives to that basically that can be utilized to receive the required financial standing. We want you to demonstrate to us that you do have basically a plan and the expertise to execute the project that you are bidding into our tender process. And you must be a commercially registered company, and there must be no bounds of exclusion from any European or German tender process for your company. With regard to the project size, 5 megawatts electricity capacity is the minimum. there is the need that at least 5 years after the award of the contract, production must start, so that I think is anyway a factor that otherwise would make your project probably commercially not really viable if you cannot start producing, because the time window for the funds is fixed, and that is quite a strong commercial driver. And last but not least, the start of the construction of the electrolyzers must not have begun before you basically submitted your participation request. That's it in a nutshell, basically, with regard to these requirements for participating in our long-term purchase tender process. And now actually I would like to give you a very quick view into the delivery chain. I mentioned already delivery will need to take place in Germany, but it will be basically the location chosen by the winning bidder, where we will be picking up the product. So we are not going to require you to deliver any harbor or any location specified by ourselves. Is it off now? No. You will be basically choosing which supply chain is most suitable for yourself to make delivery of the product to HINCO. What we are foreseeing is contractually is that the product will be taken off by HINCO's customers, so the winners in the sales side auctions, at the terminal by a transportation means selected by the off-taker. And as we see right now, we would like to see the product delivered to a terminal where at least 3 ways of onward transport would be feasible. So for example, by barge, by train, by truck, by pipeline, or potentially in case that the product is ammonia, by an ammonia cracker. To us, it's important that we do have a large enough market on the sales side, so that the price signals that we're getting from our sales auction are really representative. And that's the reason why we're having a little bit, when you look into the contract from the first instance, it might seem a little bit complicated approach to arranging that, but it's particularly designed to permit the winning bidder to establish his supply chain and still leave sufficient competition on the sales side once this delivery point is selected. And I like to say the delivery point is, or the delivery terminal is going to be selected for the entire term of the contract, ideally. That's at least what our starting point would be, to also give the supplier the opportunity to make long-term commitments with the companies that basically own the terminal infrastructure. Which proved, terminal infrastructure proved to be one how to say that, decisive bottleneck in the supply chain. So let me just point out to you that looking into this supply chain detail very early in your project might be worthwhile, because it would give you the opportunity to talk to several service providers. There are service providers available there, but it might be quite lengthy negotiations required. Having said that, we hold our contract counterparty, so the winning bidder, eventually accountable for making the product delivery at the committed delivery point. However, we also know that if there is new construction, for example, involved with regard to that type of infrastructure, delays can happen. And we do have a flexible mechanism in our contract in case that the infrastructure required for making delivery is not available. Having said that, ideally we would be happy to receive the product in a place where all the infrastructure exists, and if we're finding that there is any kind of constraint, basically we will need to find alternative solutions in mutual negotiations. That's the idea behind that proposal. However, the negotiations will be on the grounds that the supplier really will need to take his utmost effort to make that supply happen, because it's part of the supply commitment. So, I mean, this deep dive probably is for all of you who have not been in the position to really go into the details of the contract proposal that we've been sharing, not as insightful as it could have been, and we're expecting you to submit your questions in this regard. Obviously, also proposals are very welcome. We will be collecting all of those. We are not going to be answering any question we are receiving, but Martin mentioned already, our plan is to consolidate the questions that we received and provide answers in a Q&A document that are beneficial for all parties participating in the tender process, not only in the global and in the African lot, but also in the other lots. Thank you for your attention. Now I'd like to ask Martin to take us through the rest of our presentation.
Thank you, Markus. Okay, thank you, Markus. So I will continue with the process and also with the next steps, somehow summarizing many of the points that we mentioned. As I said, that's the process that I already shared with you. Currently, we're in the public release phase, conducting our roadshow events. We already published the documents. We are asking for feedback. So we would really encourage you to provide this feedback to us. As Markus said, currently we are not answering the questions that you sent, but we take your feedback into account when updating the documents. We would encourage you to timely work on the formation of consortia, for example, if you need partners. If you want to have a technical, like think about the pre-certification, for example, and also considering the timelines. As I said, we try to be as transparent as possible. That's why we said we don't expect the final bid to be handed in before March 26th. So be aware of your internal processes, your committees, so you will be able to hand in a final binding bid. In the application phase, there will be one very important document, which is the project description. I think as long as you can plausibly describe your project and how you're setting up your project, you will be considered as being eligible for the process. In the negotiation phase, as we said, the result will be the final set of HPA documents that is the basis for every bid. And in the bidding phase, we will ask you to provide, and that's very important, a firm bid. So in this second H2Global funding window, there will be only one bid. So we can't accept any conditions precedent in your bid. We don't want to see any tactical bidding. Be aware that with the final bid, you have to hand in a firm price, firm volumes. That's why we ask you to get in contact with the committees early on in the process. So be aware that this has to be a final bid. And one thing to mention here is after we selected the best bidder, it's not the end of the process. So there are two more things that have to be delivered by the best bidder. One is the check for excess returns. So that's again a requirement set out by the European Commission, where you have to provide a proof that you don't have any windfall profits with your project, and this has to be certified by a public accountant. And then additionally, there's the pre-certification that has to be provided by you, and after you provided all those information, we are ready to sign the contract with your project. So, kind of lessons learned. Those are lessons learned from our pilot auction, but to be honest, those are also points that we want you to remember when you're thinking about this evening today. So, speak to your committees, because we had delays in the first process, especially in consortia, because there were delays in approvals by the committees. Do the technical planning. The further your technical planning is developed, the easier it is to have a firm price, firm quantities. I mean, that's very obvious, but just to mention this again. If you need further support, be it as a consortium member or as a subcontractor, look for those partners early on in the process. As we said, speak to your banks, explain to your banks why HINCO is a very bankable off-taker. Explain why that our liabilities are limited to the funding that is provided by the governments. That's something that is mentioned, that is important to mention. Again, the pre-certification. If you do the pre-certification, it reduces. It has a lot of advantages for your project. It reduces your regulatory risks. It improves your bankability. And also, if you are looking for additional off-takers, for example, it makes your project more attractive to off-takers in Europe, because you already show that you are able to fulfill the requirements. And then, if you need additional off-takers, of course, also important, look for those off-takers early on in the process. It saves valuable time at the end of the process. So that's basically in a nutshell what we would like you to remember, of course. And now we have some more slides, some more Menti questions that we would like to raise before we go to the Q&A session. So there are some producers in the room. So we would like to know what is the project, where do you think your project will be? So just share some information with us. Okay, I thought there are more than 3 producers in the room. Thank you. Okay, I see a strong support for Morocco. Okay, interesting. Okay, we are really happy if the project that we will be awarding in 2026 is from Morocco, of course. We have another question for you. I think, can you click on the slide again? I think with a Menti it doesn't work with a presenter. So some were early and already replied to this question. So is any one of you considering to deliver hydrogen, be it in a global lot or in the product open lot? Okay, we see the majority does not want to deliver hydrogen. Someone says it's a weak business case, but it's still a positive feedback to see that 7 producers plan to deliver hydrogen. Thank you. The next question would be, and I have to ask you again, can you click again on the next slide? So, is there anyone who considers to supply ammonia in the second funding window? We will have the same question with methanol. So we have more companies delivering ammonia than producers in the room. Okay, that's interesting. Maybe we can go to the next slide. Thank you. So methanol. Anyone up for the delivery of methanol? Okay, that's very interesting feedback. Maybe one thing to mention is we know that the market, we know the feedback of the market. We know that there are a lot of people saying that ammonia is more competitive. One thing that we want to stress is that the setup of our project, of the criteria and of the sorry, of the tender, no, of the so the price being the most important award criteria. That's what I was looking for. Thank you. The award criteria is doesn't care if it's methanol or ammonia. So we are completely open. I think this might be the last slide, but can you go through the next slide again? So maybe that's very interesting for us and for everyone in the room. There are a lot of companies from Morocco, but from the whole African continent. So who is considering to participate? So I think I'm allowed to mention that this would be a significant increase of projects from Morocco and also from the African continent applying for the process, which we would of course really appreciate. So again, a question to the producers. Do you have already all the partners on board that you need? Okay, too bad. But maybe I can assure you, you're not the only one who's still looking for a partner for the project. Maybe one thing, we can't be a matchmaker. HINCO does not do this. But we would encourage you to engage with all the participants here in the room and also with other participants during our roadshow events. So I think that's a very good situation, good opportunity for you to meet your partner for the hydrogen production. Thank you. So what's your current status of the project? And someone already replied to some of the questions. Okay, thank you. Maybe for those projects in the early stage of the process, as I said, the project description, it's necessary to plausibly explain your project planning. So even if you're in an early phase of the project, you will be able to be eligible for the process itself. Okay, so there are a lot of challenges. I think everyone is aware of the situation in the current market. So we want to know, what do you think? What are the biggest obstacles? And if there are no obstacles, I think we don't even need H2Global.
And certainly you can mention more than one.
Ah, okay. Okay, we see the delivery period as an obstacle, RED2 compliance, infrastructure, of course, market outlook potential. Okay, it's a very even distribution. So we see the infrastructure in the country of development of the production is one of the biggest obstacles, as well as the HVA duration, the know-how of the entire value chain and the market outlook. Okay, still changing. Thank you for your feedback. I think that's one of the last slides. I think that's the last. Perfect. Okay, thank you very much for your attention. We would again encourage you to provide feedback here in the room to us, to Mr. Stochrost from the BMWE, from the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy. Yeah, we are happy to reply to your questions. I'm very sure there are several.
Thank you, Martin. Great, and we're right in the middle of the Q&A session. So I hope we have not been able to explain everything already, by just sharing with you that presentation, and we're looking very much forward to learning more about your questions.
Matthias, are you kind of moderating the Q&A session, or who's moderating the Q&A session? So are there any questions in the room? And maybe if you have a question, we would kindly ask you to introduce yourself and maybe also name the company that you're working for.
Don't be shy, please.
Hello, Naufal Saadi from Scatec. Actually, we work on the Egypt Green Hydrogen project for the first bid. I had a question about the cap on the volumes. So do you have any cap on volumes, or is it only based on the actual amount of money that the funds that are available, so the 60 million? Or could you bid any amount of volume and get like a smaller proportion of price?
Yeah, so actually we do not have any thresholds on volume, so even small-scale projects would have the opportunity to participate and would be awarded if they were the first in the scoring. And then the remainder of the budget would be deployed for awarding potentially the second best bid. So that's in the second tender the metric that we're going to apply.
I have many more questions, but I'll leave it to the room.
Hi, this is Nejla Yazgi. I'm the Managing Director for Siemens Energy. I have a question. Does the equipment providers have any role on this tender, or is it restricted only to developers? And how can we partner up with the developers to make their cases stronger? Does that have any value added?
So I think first of all it's very important that there is no restriction with regard to who is going to be the participant in the tender process. What is important is that basically the minimum criteria or the participation criteria are being met. And if your company were, for example, not a developer but would be a midstreamer even, that basically would set up the production in a cooperation with local partners. Still the midstreamer would be eligible to participate in the tender process. What would be important though is that the characteristics of the product would need to comply with the contract specifications. So it would need to be an RFNBO, all of the other criteria agreed in the contract would need to be met. But there is no restriction whatsoever of the type of business the participant is engaging in.
I think if there are no questions in the room, we also received some questions online. I see a question over here.
Hello, is there any issues if we get some subsidies, other subsidies to develop project to answer to your tender? Can we in fact add different subsidy scheme?
Sorry, I'm not sure if I got the question correctly. Could you maybe repeat it?
Yeah, if we get, for example, a local subsidy scheme or others, can we add this? Can we apply to this mechanism? Is it compatible or not?
So I'm not a lawyer, but I must say, in principle, this is possible. What we basically need to make sure is that you disclose basically any support funds or any support measures that you receive, and that will be part of the how do we call it?
So there's no double subsidization. For example, if you receive subsidies for the electrolyzer capacity, it has to be factored in the it has to be shown in the price.
So when we do after the award of the best, or before award of the best bidder, when we basically doing the check on the commercial return to see whether windfall profits basically are the outcome of the various government supports, that would be the situation where we would be looking into the disclosure of that information, and as long as the criterion of a market common return on investment is met, that would not be hindering you to basically get the contract award. Just in case that we would find that due to those accumulation of subsidies, there would be an extraordinarily profitable project, that would be hindering us then to award the contract.
There are two questions.
Thank you. My name is Tilzino Mamada from UCP. My question is, like, in those project setups, often there's a certain complexity, meaning you have like different partners, joint ventures, project companies and so on. What kind of flexibility is there in terms of like which the legal entity submits this to the tender versus which is then the legal entity who will actually provide the product at the end of the day? Like, what is the flexibility and how do you deal with this situation? Thank you.
So you're basically asking if there can be an SPV, for example, set up after the decision that the contract will be awarded to a specific bidder. So we ask, if you have a consortium, for example, we ask to have a leader in the consortium who's kind of in lead and who's responsible for the consortium. But it is foreseen that you will be able to transfer the contract to an SPV. So that's already set up, already provided in the HPA. Does it answer your question?
Yes, it does. I mean, it's like a more general question because it's always something that comes up in those kind of situations.
Yep.
But I understand there's the possibility to novate a contract to another legal entity if that's necessary.
Yeah, that's already kind of a lesson learned from the first tender. As we already say, we are a learning instrument, and that's why we already included from the beginning on. Now, Marcus, do you want to add something?
Just building on what Martin said. We do not want to restrict participants due to legal structure during the tender process. And if you already have formed a joint venture company or some project company, the project company would be able to attend if it would fulfill the financial requirements, obviously. Or one bidder could be acting on behalf of a group of members of project participants. You might consider to form a joint venture early on in the process, or you might just after winning the tender process decide to then transfer the project to a special purpose vehicle. All of these are options that are feasible in the design that we are proposing.
Thank you.
There's another question.
Hello, Leila El-Baishi from Business Development Director from Energie, working on behalf of OCP for the development of their project. So my question is to complete on Til's question. I think there is some conditions about keeping maybe 51% of the bidder in the SPV, are those negotiable? Are those fixed conditions, or are there some conditions that could be negotiated then regarding that? And the second question is about the offtake. So I understand that we need to close the offtake roundtable before to bid. Is it something that is also flexible, or we need to comply with that? Thanks.
Maybe let me go for the first question. I believe this details on the novation of the contract. We are looking forward to receiving comments and recommendations in this regard. So this is starting point. Let me put it like that. And we are open to learn from you what would be required from your perspective to make that a viable option. Unfortunately, I did not fully understand what your second question is about, so I may ask you to repeat that, please.
Just regarding the offtake, I understand that we need to close the roundtable of the off-takers also before maybe to finalize the bidding, or maybe you can clarify that.
So if I understand your question correctly, you're asking if you have to have off-takers for the whole capacity of your project. So that's a clear no, it's not necessary for us. But when you sign the contract and when you hand in the bid, you have to be aware that it's a firm bid, and so the prices are firm and the quantities are firm. So you can't have the condition precedent in your offer that you have to look for additional off-takers. So you have to do whatever is necessary for you to hand in the binding bid, and it's up to you if you want to take the risk to look for off-takers afterwards, or to have everyone on board already. Any more questions in the room? Otherwise, we also have some online.
Thank you. Amke Blok, Möhring Energie. I've got a question for the origin of the installed of the. That's funny. Sorry. Of the installations of the processing installations. Is there any restriction to the origin of those? I know that from the EU auction there are restrictions with regards of the origin of the, for example, electrolyzers. Is there anything installed here?
Yeah, actually, we do have the requirement that the investment decision must not have been taken before you apply for participating in the tender. So with regard to the electrolyzers, we have that that an early start of investment in that infrastructure would not be permissible.
Maybe, if I may add, I think I understood the question that you were asking if there's any local content requirement, for example, if the electrolyzer capacity could be purchased from China, for example. Yeah, and there's no local content requirement in our tender here. Okay, one over here.
From EDF Renewable.
Is it working?
Can I just?
If you speak out loud, it would be.
The question is regarding the BD score. So 90% of the BD score is related to the average price and the weighted average price, and then you standardize hydrogen, ammonia, and methanol using the low heating level, right? The question is, isn't the formula here devised to work hydrogen producers against ammonia and methanol? Isn't it fair to compare hydrogen bid versus hydrogen bid and ammonia bid versus ammonia bid, or we have to standardize all the producer, all the final products, and then decide on the bid?
Let me answer that question. In this tender design, it's just about the energy content of any of these 3 eligible products. So we are not distinguishing, or we're not making a competition on a product by product basis in this case, but basically in this tender design, these 3 products are competing with one another on the basis of the energy content delivered.
One question over here. Maybe you can pass on the mic. Thank you.
Thank you. Yusra Soua from Mazen. My question is about the pricing mechanism. So you've written on the slide that bidders do not have the right to renegotiate the price once they submit the bid. And since we are very early in the industry of green hydrogen in general, it's quite tricky for the developers to define a price. So how are you supporting developers in this scheme?
So first of all, you're right. We ask for a firm bid, for a firm price. I think it's important to know that all of the bidders have the same issue. So those risks will be factored into the price. So this will also reflect in the average price of all bidders. And then I know that there are some adjustment mechanisms that I'm not completely aware of that you can for sure answer, Markus, being one of the brains behind the contract.
Well, so I mentioned the various price components that we are asking you to submit with your bid. And with regard to the details or the price factors that basically are determined by external factors like governments, particularly export and import duties, which form part of the contract price, we would want you to provide a price cap, basically, and the actual contract price will be based on the duties actually paid for the product delivered, however, not exceeding the cap price. So on that side, it basically is working to the benefit of the off-taker, which would be Hinco, that we have certainty about the maximum amount of price element that we would be charged. And the important thing why we need that is because we want to make our commitment really bankable. We will be able to honor that contract on the basis of that price formula for the quantities that we are committing to take off. So that's why we choose that design. With regard to all of the other price components, there is the opportunity on a contract year by contract year basis to change each of the price components on the grounds of the price projections you are having, or the cost projections you are having, or the contract terms that you might have with a service provider that you're utilizing to make delivery of the product. So there's price formula flexibility in the structure. However, what we do not have is any indexation to inflation or any investment good indices development. These are aspects for the same reason that I mentioned with regard to the duties, import and export duties, we cannot make available in the H2Global instrument.
Maybe if I may ask one of the questions that were raised online. Just a very quick question. I think it's a very good question. So the question here is, what level of detail is required for the project description of the initial screening of applications versus the ulterior bid? Do we need permits, land rights already secured, and FEED studies already completed, or is it simple self-declaration and project description enough? So I think it's important to mention the project description will contain a lot of details about your project, about your planning. And even if you don't have a partner, even if you don't have the land rights, you have to plausibly show how you plan to get those land rights, to get your partner on board, how to provide for the other requirements, other certification. So it's a preliminary project description that has to be handed in.
Hi, Libo Yokwe from GIZ South Africa. I noticed that there wasn't any sustainable aviation fuel. Is there a reason for that particularly? Is that also based on the first tender process and lessons maybe from there?
That's just a decision by the provider of the funding. So it was decided by the German Ministry for Economic Affairs and Energy, as well as the Dutch Ministry for Climate Policy and Green Growth, not to provide any subsidies for ESAF. But if you wish to have a subsidized scheme for renewable aviation fuel, maybe you should speak to Mr. Stochers, because I think it's a valuable feedback also for him. Maybe Matthias, I'm not sure how much time is left for the Q&A. Yeah, sure. I just wanted to be sure that we don't stress the timetable.
Hi, Gauthier from Total Energie H2. I think it's somewhere mentioned that the bidder must demonstrate that the project will not be viable without the funds under H2Global. How do you expect the bidder to do so if they have not finalized their other offtake arrangements on the side?
Let me take this question. Obviously, what we will be expecting from bidders to provide is a self-declaration that that's the case. So if the funding would not be available, the project investment decision would not be taken, and the project would basically not be developed. That is what would tick that box.
Maybe if I may add one comment. So the reason for this requirement is that the European Commission, for example, they don't allow subsidies for projects that would be like those kind of subsidies for projects that would be developed anyway. So that's what should be avoided. I see there's another question over there from Stantec.
I guess this question is, you already are hinting that the reason why you cannot do that, but I assume that the fact that the bid will be submitted in March 2026, you know that most of the project won't be able to meet the timeline of 2028 to submit for like COD and delivery. So I guess you have the same issue with the previous tenders. Is there any way that the budget for those early years can be, or you will look into reallocating that, or is that budget going to be returned?
Thank you. So first of all, that's a question that was raised during many sessions of our roadshow. And we mentioned that we are in, like, as I said, there's a process ongoing to increase the budget for the last year, and again also add another year. And there's also, like, we already approached the BMWE that this is a very strong feedback that we receive from roadshows. So that's something that we are already discussing with the BMWE, but that's still to be decided.
I mean, the good news probably is that by the time that we will be calling for bids, that decision will be taken and it will be known.
Okay, maybe one last question, because as I understood, we don't have that much time left. Okay. So considering the final bids are submitted before projects reach FID, what happens if between the final bids and the FID there are some changes to the offer, Markus? Sorry, maybe once again. So
I'm lost.
After the FID is handed, after the project is awarded, so the project is awarded before the project takes its FID. So what happens if there are changes to the project between the award of the contract and the FID? Maybe if I can take the question, or reply to the question how I think it's meant. Changes are possible, but what is not possible, for example, is a change in the price and the quantity that is provided, because that's part of the contract. So the contract is closed.
All of the contract criteria basically need to be obeyed to, and other than that, obviously, what you probably won't be able to do if you win the African regional tender, you can't be producing in Asia.
I think maybe one thing that is possible, for example, or thinkable, in your contract, in your project description, if you say you're producing 100 megawatt 100 megawatt of renewable capacity from wind, and then you decide to change it to solar PV, for example, and it still fulfills the requirements set out in the RED 2 and the delegated acts. That's not an issue. So, there are no further questions. Thank you very much.
So many thanks to both of you for your patience and also for taking the time to answering the many questions. I think the Q&A session would be closed from now on, but of course we would be very happy to welcome you for a small networking event on the rooftop starting from now. So that would also obviously, if Martin and Markus are still up for it, the occasion to ask some questions that you might want to address privately to them. And I wish you all a very nice evening, and thank you again for staying with us tonight. I enjoyed it a lot. And obviously, we've addressed many thanks to the guest speakers, to the HK, and to the public, but I would also finally take the occasion to thank also my colleagues and my bosses also, never forget them. Yes, and on that note, have fun with us tonight. Thank you very much.